I'm Kevin Tumlinson, and this is the story behind my stories.
You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
JT Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Ford,
Corey Doctorow,
Brandon Sanders,
Robin Mott,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Kevin Tumlinson.
Thank you for listening to Author Stories. We are now more than 350 episodes in and not slowing down anytime soon. It's because of you, the loyal listeners who tune in each day to Author Stories to hear the best author interviews around, and I just wanted to say thank you. On the right-hand sidebar of the website at hankgarner.com, you can find links where you can subscribe to the show, and it helps other people find the show. The more people subscribe, the higher we go in the rankings, and the easier people find us. I'd like to thank some sponsors this week for helping us bring the show to you. I, your humble host, have a brand new book out. It's called The Pandora Codex. Oliver Weber, Book 1, A Closely Guarded Secret, A Stolen Artifact, and a Madman Trying to Open a Portal to Hell. Can Oliver Weber become the hero he's meant to be? Pick up the Pandora Codex now. It's the first book in the Oliver Weber series. The second book, Jacob's Ladder, comes out very soon. Go ahead, dig into this series. Grab it now. You won't be disappointed. My friend Patricia Gilliam has a new series called Series Craft 101, and she has a series of books, the Fictional Character Creator Workbook, Setting and World Building Workbook. If you are looking to put together a long-running series like Patricia has done, these are some things that she's learned and that she can help you to get on top of that makes managing a long series much easier. Go check it out. There's a link in the show notes, and we'll be talking about it more. Bocara Brumley has a new book called Imani Earns Her Cape. It's a middle grade novel. You might have heard us talk about it on the show just a week or so ago when Bocara was on. 12-year-old Imani should be celebrating the most important day of her life by eating myrfruit, casting flying spells, and laughing with her mother, but there's just one massive problem. Her mother's been kidnapped by a giant troll, and now Imani is lost in the Fey realm with no way home back to Virginia. Completing her rite of passage alone is inadvisable, but if Imani doesn't want to lose the only family she's ever had, she may have no choice. Transportal train travel, underwater cities, submarines, sea dragons, and unexpected family all combine in Imani Earns Her Cape. Thanks for listening to the show. At the end, as always, we have an audiobook clip from my friend Richard Gleaves, the Jason Crane series. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have my friend Kevin Tumlinson back on the show with me. It's been a little while since Kevin was on, and a lot has been happening with him and his writing, and I wanted to get him on and hang out for a little bit and talk about what's new with him. Kevin has a new book out called The Girl in the Mayan Tomb. It's the latest in his Dan Kotler series, a series I absolutely love, and I know that you are going to also. Welcome back to the show, Kevin.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me back on.
I'm excited to have you.
It's good to be
here. The last time we talked, I think a lot has changed with you and Miss Kara and in the
so much.
The meet. You were you had embarked on this grand adventure of living in a motorhome and going across the world, and you had also taken up a position with Draft Digital with those folks, and you were writing science fiction and some thriller, and kind of a lot's changed since then. So what's going on with you right now?
Yeah, the motorhome thing was a very cool experience. And ironically, it's Draft Digital is kind of part of why we came off the road, I think. Not the entire reason, and they're not to blame, by the way. It's just this is how things worked out. My wife and I both have positions that do allow us to travel quite a bit. And so the dream had always been, we're going to get the RV, we're going to travel, go to conferences, go to book signings to make it this big, world tour kind of thing. And then when I started doing work with Draft to Digital, and she is a project manager with Office Depot. They do their furniture, office installations and stuff like that. So now we're flying all the time, but to different ends of the world. And then we're flying back to the Houston area where we had our RV parked, and we're sleeping in a parking lot, basically. Like we're in a tin can in a parking lot somewhere.
So you're going from hotel rooms to an RV back and forth.
Right. Yeah. So that wasn't the dream,
right?
But travel has always been, the goal. So we travel much more now, sometimes together, sometimes not. So we pulled off the road. We spent about a year in the RV. We pulled off the road, full time a year ago, actually. Has it really been this long? It's just amazing how much time
I know
has passed. But yeah, we pulled off a year ago. We got an apartment. We always wanted to live in like a town center kind of thing where it's like living sort of in a city, but with small town feel. So we moved into the Pearland, Texas town center and lived there for a year, and we really enjoyed it. But we determined that we both wanted our own office spaces. And then while I had an office space, she did not. So we've moved to yet again, like within the past 2 weeks. If anyone's keeping track, that's like an average of 2 moves or an average of a move every 2 years. It's insane. But we've now found a remarkably lovely place, very close to her family, close to my family, close to our friends in Sugar Land, Texas, where we were living before. And we love it. We love the area here. So that's the whole move scenario. And we're still traveling like crazy. We're just now we have a home base.
It's really funny when you think about it that your idea of the dream is sometimes kind of skewed from what the actual practical application of the dream is. It's
right.
and sometimes you kind of spend all of, I'm not saying you did this, I'm saying I've done this. You kind of spend all of your energy pursuing what you think the dream is. And then when you get it, you're like, I think we could actually do this better, doing this another way. And,
well, it is a kind of practice in, it's sort of the be careful what you wish for kind of idea.
Right.
Like, here's the irony. So I don't know. I don't want to go too frou-frou on you here, because I don't know what everyone of your listeners believes or practices.
Oh, I don't care.
You know me. I'm a spiritual creature, right? And one of the things that I do believe is the idea of the whole law of attraction, where you get out in the world, get what you ask for, And we were talking about it. And we're like, we want to travel. We want an RV. We want to travel. We want to explore the world. Live in the RV. We just never actually specified we want to travel together in the RV.
Right.
Because here we are. We've got the RV. We've got the experience, but we weren't traveling together. We weren't in the RV. So So we're remedying. The funny thing is, this is how life works out. God does really these remarkable things in your life. All the quote mistakes that we made, right, have all turned around to benefit us in the most unexpected ways. And that's what I love, man. I love, that's why I'm trying to train my brain so that I'm no longer looking at things in a negative light, but instead, this thing happened. It was unexpected. It's not necessarily what I wanted. It wasn't part of the plan. Where is it going? What's the good thing that's going to come out of it? And that's really making a huge difference in our lives too.
Well, I'm a big believer in looking at how any situation is going to ultimately benefit me. And maybe it's from something I learned. Maybe it's from a choice that I made that took us down a path that I never would have thought. I think there's something to be said for looking at how that's going to turn out to your benefit.
Yeah. I mean, what it does is keep you open to opportunities.
It does.
No matter, regardless of what you believe, I think that this is the best practice for everybody, because if you're always looking for the opportunity in every tragedy, the opportunity in every setback, you will find it. you will find something that allows you to be empowered in that scenario, or to take it and empower yourself in some other aspect of your life. That's a fundamental part of my, what I believe about life in general. And it really doesn't matter whether you consider yourself spiritual or, what your beliefs are. I think that is absolutely the right way to approach everything, including your writing career. If you are an author, we have setbacks all the time, man. We got, challenges that keep us from writing. This move. You and I were talking just before the show started. We was talking about how I got off track with my latest book because the next book in that Dan Kotler series got off track because of all the moves. All the packing and the sort of transition stuff. We stayed with my in-laws for a week while we finished up, and then we moved in here. And then once we're here, I got to set up an office space, get internet going, get all this stuff going. Lots of little challenges. What can I take from that? And what's happened is it's changed my approach to some of my work in these incredibly positive ways that I never would have considered had I not been challenged to figure out, how am I going to get back on track? So these are things I think every author needs to consider and keep in their bag. How do I take the challenges that face me in my career and use them to empower myself?
Well, and being grateful, for it's a big thing for me, and something that I really try to practice, because when I lose my attitude of gratitude, to really 80s cliche there, when I lose that, then I start looking at all the negative in the world, and I start looking at, this book is not progressing like I want it to, instead of thinking, there are actual people out there that are waiting for this book, and I'm grateful that people are waiting to read what I write, and they have been generous to me, and I'm going to in turn be generous with them, and be grateful for the opportunity to do that. The other side of that is, we as authors, especially in today's climate, put a lot of pressure on ourselves to perform and to deliver, and there's very good reasons for that. We all know that the way the market is, and when you're writing for a specific market, and you need to be delivering new books ever so often, and there's kind of a process that if you want to be successful, these are things that are proven to work. As someone who is an author and works, in publishing with Draft to Digital, what do you think about that? About the professional author of today and the stress that comes with that, and like when we go through things like you do, where you're doing a major move and that schedule gets off a little bit, how do you deal with that? And do you think that that we're in a good place in publishing with those stresses?
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're in the best place. We've got this. There is something incredible going on in publishing right now, particularly in independent publishing, and that is that we have this explosive growth of resources and tools and opportunities. Draft Digital, of course, is part of that growth, and it is all about. I say the word empowerment a lot these days. I'm all about empowerment, man. I'm particularly about indie author empowerment. And I mean that as we are at a time when authors can completely own their career from A to Z. To the point of, there's a lot of talk about exclusivity versus going wide. And we mean by that, sticking with Amazon's, KDP Select. Typically, that's what we mean by exclusivity, or going wide as in, either you go direct to Barnes & Noble and Apple and Google Play and all these other sources, storefronts, or you use an aggregator like Draft Digital to do it for you and simplify it. We talk a lot about that kind of stuff, but the truth is we're empowered even beyond that. We now are in an era where I can sell direct to my readers if I choose. and probably make more money. I can make 100%, well, minus maybe 3% processing if I if I sell direct to my readers. I can actually do so much more than traditional publishing has told us we can do, and that traditional publishing itself has done. And we're in this era where we really just have to rethink, like, what is our goal, because that's going to determine our strategy, right? If my goal is I want to be an internationally recognized author who hits the New York Times bestseller list and all the bestseller lists, and I make my income from readers worldwide who discover me through those channels, if that's my goal, that dictates one strategy. The strategy of I must be wide, I must promote, I must market, I must do things in a certain way in order to hit those lists and get those readers. If I instead just want to make a living from my writing, just want to make money to pay my bills, to buy my food, and I want to have the joy of writing as my career, I don't necessarily have to do it that way. I can do it that way and meet that goal, or I could choose to go just direct to my readers, build my mailing list, however I choose to do that, release a new book every month, sell it direct to my readers using platforms like BookFunnel, which will actually let readers put it on their device in any format they want, any reader they want, So I could start selling direct, make quite a bit more money on my books. I wouldn't have to sell as many copies to be right up there with some of the best sellers on the planet. So we're in the best time. We're in the most empowered time for indie authors because we have so many choices and so many directions we can go. It is just flat out incredible. And I think we are entering an era where we're going to use a hybridized model to really explode our growth as authors, to really explode our careers as authors, and fundamentally redefine what it means to be an author. I think we're right on the cusp of that. I think this is the best possible time to be an author.
I absolutely agree. And I interview a lot of indie authors as well as traditionally published authors, like you do on your podcast, The Word Slinger, which I'm a huge fan of. One thing that I've heard over and over and over again the last couple of years is that the two camps are not very different at all anymore. No. The traditionally published authors, especially one that's just breaking in, they are indie authors that just happen to have a publisher publishing their books. They're doing all their own marketing. They're doing all of their networking. They're operating no differently than indie authors are. And, there's a lot of changes in publishing, and even if you're signed to a traditional publisher, you really are a hybrid author. And I find that really interesting that that the playing field is more level now than it's ever been.
It absolutely is. It's funny because we used to have conversations about the disappearing mid-list, and for those who may not know what that means, I mean, in short, the mid-list were those authors who were maybe muddling through, maybe making their living as an author, probably not, probably had day jobs, but they constituted for a time the bulk of book sales. And then there was a shift toward, everyone has to be a bestseller in order for publishers to invest in you. So now that's where the gate started to, the gap in the gate started to narrow. The gatekeepers narrowed the point of entry for authors. And so the disappearing mid-list was all those people who otherwise might have had at least the pieces of a writing career had nowhere to go. And then along came, indie publishing. And I differentiate, by the way. I use the terms interchangeably quite a bit because it's the way people understand it. But to me, there is self-publishing and then there is indie publishing. And the fundamental difference for me, and this is just me, so take this with the grainiest grain of salt. But self-publishing to me is what we've always had. We've always had the ability to self-publish. That's nothing new. In fact, there are self-published billionaires out there. There are people who have self-published since the invention of the printing press. We have had self-publishing. Indie publishing to me is what started to emerge around 2008 with the implementation of technology like Amazon's KDP platform, e-readers as a device and then as an app. The advent of people using internet marketing techniques and strategies as part of their author marketing. To me, that is indie publishing. Self-publishing is something anybody can do. Literally anybody can do it. You don't need anything special. It doesn't even have any overhead. Indie publishing is more of the business. The more of I'm treating this as my career. This is what I am, and it is what I do. So those are my distinctions in those two things. And I think what's happening in the traditional world, you and I, we've both talked to folks like Steve Berry. When I talked to him, and this was fairly recent, I guess, but when I interviewed him, what was interesting to me was when he talks about what he's doing to promote his work, he's talking in the same terms that indie publishers use. But when he was talking about how he believes authors get their start in the business, he was talking like a traditional publisher. So I think there's a disconnect right now that's good, and I think that gap's going to narrow over time. There's still this idea that if you want to be, you want to be a serious author, if you want to be an actual professional in this, that you have to go through this gatekeeping process and be vetted and approved. And we of course know that is not true. We know that that's not true. I'm not going to fight anyone over it. You can argue that side of it if you want, and I'll let you have your reality. But my reality and the reality of a few thousand, 100,000, 250,000, however, a million maybe, other authors is that we don't need anybody to approve us or vet us or give us permission to go out and become success stories. Everyone points to Hugh Howey and Andy Weir and guys like that, but I'm not even going to point to those guys in this example. I'm going to tell you about guys like, Michael Anderle and, one of your recent guests, good friend of mine, good friend of yours, Ernest Dempsey, who, I remember you guys making fun of me on your show. I remember.
I love Ernie so much.
Ernie is the coolest dude. I love him. He's my brother, man.
He sends me the most random text and just laugh. It's so funny. But yeah. Wait, Kevin, a lot of those old guard of publishing, those guys, their attitudes are changing. And I think their attitudes are changing because they're feeling it in their pocketbook. I remember seeing an interview with a very successful, well-respected author from my home state of Mississippi, who kind of defined the courtroom genre, courtroom thriller genre in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And he was bragging in this interview that he writes one book a year, and he actually writes a book in about 3 months, and then he promotes it for 3 months, and he plays golf for 6 months. And he was really smug, the way he came across. And then last year he put out 2 books, and he had a couple of novellas that came out, and I think a short story collection, because people get tired of waiting for your one glorious release a year. And when a couple of them started showing the signs that he was taking his readers for granted, they moved on to an indie who was writing for them. And you start feeling that, and then that's when those attitudes change, is when they start feeling it in their pocketbook, and they say, well, maybe these indie guys are onto something.
It is interesting to me because I go to a lot of conventions, right? And some of the biggest on the planet, really. And I was talking to someone at NINC this past year, last, I guess, September, and she was looking at going indie because her publisher had sort of shifted the rules, and basically she wasn't going to make any money doing the work the way the publisher wanted her to, and she was very frustrated with this idea of being blocked at every turn on every decision, having no empowerment, And so, she was asking me a lot of questions and I gave her some advice, and it was all very shocking to her. Like just the concept of, because in her mind, it takes a year to write a book. That's just a requirement, it's just a rule. And I'm like, why? Why would it take you? If it takes you a year, that's fine. If it takes you a year to research and to write the draft and do rewrites and get editors on it and, and go through the marketing strategy. If it takes you a year, then that's what it takes you. But why is it a requirement? When I know people, and you can make whatever arguments you want about quality of work, you can say, I've literally heard people say very derisively that if you wrote a book in 10 days or whatever, it's not any good, and I mean, okay. If that's how you feel, you're not my reader, I'm written. My record right now is I wrote a book in one day, a 60,000 word book in one day. That's my record. I'm never going to try to beat it because that hurt. And you can read that book and find all kinds of flaws in that book, But as people do that, they tell me about things, and I go back and I tweak and fix it, because that's the power of the indie author. Is we can do this iterative publishing process, and we can make our work better over time.
I always go back to Ray Bradbury. He wrote Fahrenheit 451 in 9 days.
Yeah.
Don't talk to me about how a quickly produced book cannot be quality. I think when the inspiration hits, you better grab the keyboard and go along for the ride. And if you're an author who can grab that inspiration daily and hold on to the keyboard, more power to you. Those arguments
let me tell you, man. All right. So most of my life, most of my career, I worked as a writer of one form or another. And most of my career, I was a copywriter, both in the agency world and as a freelancer. And if anyone were to come into that industry and say to a copywriter, anything, if you write 60,000 words in a week, it can't be any good. It has to be garbage, and look down their nose at that writer, you would get laughed right out of that business, because in copywriting, it's expected that you're going to turn out not just a lot of work, but good work, right? And the same can be said in media, in journalism. I wrote for newspapers and magazines and that sort of thing. You'll turn out, I was writing a minimum of 60,000 words a week for any given job I ever had as a writer. And that didn't hit me, by the way, until years later, when I started facing comments from people, when I would talk about writing a book in a month or whatever. Or I hear someone else talking about it, Chris Fox or somebody talking about it, and they get slammed. This idea that it is impossible to write to create good writing in that kind of time frame. The truth is, we can do anything. We can do that. It's a skill, just like any skill. It's like telling somebody it's impossible to run a 4-minute mile, or impossible to do a high jump, over 7 feet or whatever. It's just like everything else we face in life. You can not only write a book in a month, or 10 days or 5 days or 1 day. Not only can you do that, you can do it extremely well, and you can get to a point where you do that on a regular, consistent basis. And you mentioned Ray Bradbury, but look at all the Pulp Fiction guys. Dashiell Hammett and those guys, they were churning out, easily a book every week, in some cases. And it was good work. It had to be. Because at that era, it wasn't like it is now, where you could dash off something and it's it's in a word processor, so you could do the editing and finessing and all that. I mean, they had to retype these pages, and paper costs money, and typewriter ribbons cost money. The overhead of being a writer could quickly overwhelm any income you made from it. And if you got known as a hack, you wouldn't attract any customers. You wouldn't attract editors who were willing to pay for your articles or short stories or any of that. So you had to be good. So that whole notion is complete nonsense.
Well, and you know what? Something I think helps is if you're writing in a genre that you really love, and it also helps if you're writing in a series where you've got some characters that you already know and you're inside their head, and settings that you like, and those things help.
Absolutely.
If you're fighting against the story every day because you're not writing something that you love, that's work.
Yeah.
When you're writing something that you love, it's just part of your entertainment that people sit and watch TV for hours every day.
Yeah.
Well, a writer can sit and dictate the story playing in their head, in the same manner. It's
I would definitely say that loving your work and having a passion for your work definitely gives you an advantage and helps you in the creation of that work, but that isn't necessary in order for you to actually churn through. Having that is a blessing. It's an advantage. But you can most definitely write things you don't feel passionate about and get that work done and do it fast and do it well. I was writing financial reports, like annual reports for companies. That is not cool writing, man. And I was doing that, and I was churning that stuff out. They would dump, a year's worth of financial documents on me and say, okay, you have a week to turn this into our annual report for our shareholders. And there are legal ramifications to that work not being good, So I had to buckle down and do that. Not fun writing, but you can do it. And that, I'm talking you're writing, I had one financial report that was easily 40,000 words, easily. And I had to get every detail right, and I had to do it in a week time. So, that's, to me, the truth of this is you can do anything. You can take any skill and take it to that next level and get really good at it if you are committed to it, disciplined about it, and care about it. You care about doing the work. Of course, we all want to write stuff that we love and that we're passionate about. Of course, these days I don't write anything but that.
Well, speaking of that, you and I had a conversation a few months ago, and you not even remember it, but I was asking you about because you used to write a lot of science fiction, and now you're writing these great thrillers that I love so much, and I was kind of wrestling with the idea of I had a series I was working on, but I wasn't in love with it. And I had this other thing that I was really loving, but I was worried that the market was not as good for it as for the other thing that everyone is talking about. This particular market is on fire right now, and you really ought to be writing there. But if you don't want to do it, and you can't, if you can't find the motivation to do it, it's drudgery, and you're probably not putting out your best quality work. Talk a little bit about, you kind of switching your main genre and finding this niche that you are absolutely killing in right now, and writing the thing that you love to write.
Yeah, man, it really came down for me. I loved science fiction as a consumer, So when you start doing this stuff, you tend to gravitate towards the sort of stories you enjoy reading and enjoy watching and that sort of thing. Now, what I had not done, what eventually caught up with me, was I wasn't accounting for my shift in perspective and my shift in personal taste. I was allowing myself to be locked into. In high school and college, I wrote a lot of science fiction because that's what I was most interested in. Those were the stories I was most interested in telling. And so when I started doing this as a full-time career, I thought, well, of course I'm a science fiction writer. Of course I am. If I'm anything else, it destroys my identity, right? And so I started writing the kind of stories that I thought I always felt a science fiction writer had to write. And then I did okay. Like I had a career. I was starting to make pretty decent money at it. I did okay. But there was always a part of me that never felt completely satisfied. It's like, I can't write that kind of story because that's not science fiction. I have to stick with sci-fi. So I had to actually examine what kind of writer I really am. I was dared to write a thriller. Nick Thacker, of course, dared me to write a thriller. And so I did. And, I've taken some heat on that first thriller for a couple of reasons. I've now gone back and fixed a lot of things that were wrong with it. Some people still feel there's things wrong with it, and that's good on them. It was my first thriller, and I am very proud of it. And it launched the career I have now. But at that point, when I did that and it did well, it was a shock to me. Like I really just expected it to drift off into the abyss. One more thing Kevin wrote that isn't quite in line with everything else, and it's fun if you discover it. But once it started doing well, and people started talking to me about it and how excited they were about it, I realized I enjoyed writing that book more than I had enjoyed writing any other book to that time. Because it allowed me to explore these other aspects of my personality that had always been there. Had always been sort of just under the surface, but I'd never fully allowed to go off and play. If you read my science fiction, there are lots of hints of science, and there should be science in science fiction. But I mean, there's lots of hints of, not the sort of reality of science. There's lots of hints of these ideas that I explore in more detail in the archaeological thrillers. There's hints of that stuff. And then, of course, there are the characters. I've always said my characters, you could take my characters out of any of my books, put them in a completely different setting, and they would more or less behave as they do in the science fiction. They may not be aliens, and they may not be flying a spaceship, and they may not have time travel, and they may not have these things, but they would be those characters. They would be their quintessential selves. And so I had to examine what was important to me. The characters are important to me. The expression of certain ideas, that was important to me. And it didn't matter what the setting was. So if it didn't matter what the setting was, then I could actually pick a market that does well, that is popular. I'm not chasing a trend at this point. I'm deciding that I can take the skills I have and the resources I have, apply them in a new way to something that's going to make me more effective as an author. And so I shifted to, building on the success of Quello Medallion, I shifted to these archaeological thrillers, which, by the way, I didn't even have a name for these things until I met Ernie Dempsey. Who
I know I listened to that show and I laughed. I was like, yes, that's it.
Yeah. So he invented it. I'm just going to credit him, even though we later found out that everyone had already been writing in that genre anyway. I'm just going to credit
Ernie wears the crown.
Of course he does.
Yeah. Of course he does.
And
like Jughead.
Yeah. But it's a princess's crown. And
it's a tiara.
No. I want to take this time, by the way, because I wanted to do this. As soon as you told me you wanted me on the show, I wanted to take this time at some point and just express, because Ernie is my brother. You are also my brother. Nick Thacker is my brother. I would not have you guys in my life had the indie publishing movement not come along. Ernie is a fantastic guy. I mean, I just love him. I love Nick Thacker. He's a good friend. He supports me in everything. You are also one of these good, solid men that, I know I can turn to anytime I need anything. And there's a building brotherhood. And there's a sisterhood too. I'm not going to exclude anybody. We're an inclusive bunch here. But I'm just saying, right. I've met more brothers in arms through this business that made it so worth it. If I never made a dime from the books, it was worth it to know you guys. You know.
I completely agree.
So, and I know we veered off of the question.
No, that's okay. That's what we're here to do. We're here to.
I believe that you should write to market. I believe that you should look around and find a need, a yearning from the public, and fill that need. I believe you should do that. I think that's an obligation as an artist, for you to look at what hunger is out there. What are readers? What are art lovers? What are music lovers? What are they hungering for? And you ask yourself, how do I meet that need? How do I serve that need? And you're not chasing trends at that point. That's the big fear. We're watering down literature by chasing trends. We're not. We're like chefs. You know, we can finally train ourselves. We can have these skills and these tools and resources. When someone comes into our restaurant, they may order off the menu, meaning they may order what we prepared, or they may ask for something else. They may have a demand for something else. And we, as the chef, we prepare that meal and we make what that customer wants, but we make it using all of our talent and skill and training and experience. We make it our own. And that's the way I see writing to market. We're creating something that serves that public yearning and gives the people something inspiring and something, that moves them and changes them and improves them. That's really what it's all about. And that's my obligation to my readers. That's the service I give to my readers.
I couldn't agree more. And I think when there's a lot of talk about writing to market, I think the thing to remember is there's not just one market.
Right.
Military sci-fi is just white hot right now. People are just making, careers writing military sci-fi. But that's not the only market. There, archaeological thrillers are also hot. Conspiracy thrillers are also hot. You just have to maybe do a little more work to find your people. Yeah. But they're out there. Yeah. And find the thing that, like you said, that where there's a need that needs to be filled, some people you can serve, and find something that you love at the same time. And you will never, work a day in your life, to borrow that cliche.
Absolutely true. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Yeah. As long as you know that you're creating something that, is aimed at a particular person, it's aimed at an ideal reader, You have to come to a point where you're content with the fact that you may not make any money on this book. That's the gamble of the artist. Okay? When you choose art as a career, the risk is no one will buy that art and you won't make a living at it. And if your decision is, fine, I'm going to make that art anyway, then you're in the right career. And I'm not advocating for the starving artists. I'm not advocating that are you still there? Okay.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I had
no, that's fine. It's just I didn't want us disconnecting. I'm not advocating that you shouldn't make money from your writing or your art. I'm advocating that you should be willing to do it anyway, because that's the sign of an artist. That's the sign of a true artist. If you're only doing it for the income, you're never going to make any real money at this. I promise you. I mean, you may get lucky. You may get lucky, but then you're never going to be able to follow up on it, So
yeah. Going back to that indie spirit we were talking about earlier, there are a lot of parallels between the publishing industry and the music industry, and it seems like the publishing, we feel the same repercussions maybe a few years later, but this began in the music industry around 2000 or just a little bit before, when the digital era really shook up the entire music industry, and these kind of pillars of the industry started crumbling, and the way, the days of bags of cocaine and, tour buses and groupies, came to an end. And, those days were over. Now musicians had to get back to connecting with their audience directly, working for a living, going out playing clubs and building an audience again. Everything was not guaranteed anymore.
Right.
And out of that, it changed the way the music industry was, but we got some new, artists and we got people that were hungry and people that really wanted to connect with listeners for the love of doing it. And, and I the first person that comes to the top of my head was like Colby Calais, I think, who started on MySpace and, started by building her audience. And, and then, a few years later, we see that trickling down into the publishing industry, and the same thing is happening. Now you've got people that are going out finding their audience, finding out what they want, writing things for them, connecting with them, getting feedback from the readers. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Part of the thing that makes that machinery work is social media. I don't think we could deny the rise of that over the last few years that allows us to connect. But some strange things have happened the last couple of years, and I know that you share some of the same feelings that I do. But social media becomes a very toxic place sometimes. How do you balance? And I love that you really maintain a positive online persona, and you really try not to argue with people but sometimes there's just a jackass that comes out, and you just have
or
to,
many jackass
or many, so how do you maintain some balance in appreciating social media for the tool that it is, and respecting it for allowing us to connect with people like we never have before, but without falling into the traps of the quicksand that you can easily fall into?
I honestly, it is a struggle, because I am, if you were to look back at my timelines in various social media outlets, you'd find all kinds of, things that I would fight, because there's a spirit of resistance within me. Like when I see, I joke with my wife all the time, like, I can't let stupid stand, I got to go out and bash stupid in the head. But the truth is, and as I'm growing as a human being, I'm starting to learn that, we each carry with us our own realities. We each carry with us our own perspectives. My wife and I, what we say is that everyone's the hero of their own story. And I'm learning that you're never going to change. You're never going to change anyone's mind with these arguments. Like, I've never once successfully shifted someone over and they became a true believer in what I saw as truth. Never once had that happen by bickering with them on Facebook. Never. So I don't engage in that anymore. Now, it's taken me a long time to learn that and become a devotee of that, because some truths sink in a little slower than others. The way I handle social media now, and I still occasionally stir up trouble, most of the time without meaning to, like 98% of the time without meaning to. I had a recent event where all I did was share something that a fellow author posted on his blog, and the message of it was to help another author who was having some legal troubles. And then the sort of focus of that post, they appeared on my timeline and started, they basically retaliated, and they went to Draft to Digital and retaliated. And I decided, well, okay, I'll just delete that post. So I think one of the keys is don't be married to what you're posting out there. Don't don't choose those hills to die on. In other words, none of it's important. None of it is important. I always feel it's important. I think about it for days, and then I realize, why am I giving this so much energy? Why am I giving this so much myself? Like, why does it matter that this person, whatever your feelings, like a good example, I am a big fan of Atlas Shrugged, Ayn Rand. I love the work. I think it's prophetic. And there are people who just explode at the very thought of it, just foam at the mouth and explode. And I had someone do that to me this morning, Hank. Somebody this morning popped on my timeline and spewed a bunch of hate over this thing. And I'm like, so I'm like, now I'm 3 paragraphs into a response when I realize it doesn't matter. I'm not going to change this person's perspective on Atlas Shrugged. I'm not going to I don't want to champion the cause of that book or that author, So I highlight and I delete. And there's always this little part of me that feels like, oh, I'm going to die if I do that. I got to express. But I thought, for one, I could say, well, I did express it. I just didn't share it. I wrote it, but I didn't share it. But I think it would be better for me to look at that, distance myself from it in that moment, and say it does not matter. I know who I am and what I believe and what I care about. And if you know who you are and what you believe and what you care about, we can coexist. We can communicate with each other. And we can be civil to each other, even though we vehemently disagree with each other, viscerally disagree with each other. One of the things I love, it's always shocking to me when people say this sort of thing, because I used to be very, very much known to be argumentative. And I think a lot of people in my life still think of me this way. I'm married to one. But when people say, oh, if someone attacks me publicly, for example, which doesn't happen very often, honestly, but if someone gets mad at me for something I posted in comments, whatever, I'm shocked that Kevin Tumlinson would say this. I almost always have someone pop in and say, well, that's not the Kevin I know. We disagree on everything politically, but he's always very even-handed and always very fair or whatever. And I'm like, really? I am? I mean, because I feel like, I feel like I'm opposed to nearly everything everyone on Facebook says. But then I realized, okay, that's just me. Okay. So I'm not doing that publicly. I'm just doing it within my own universe, my own reality, and myself. So now the shift is going to have to continue to my personal take. So the key, I think, is you don't want to go to war with anyone on social media, because social media is about expressing opinions. Opinions don't change by the application of logic. You can't logic crazy. You can't logic stupid. You can't logic insanity. All you can do is allow it to die out on its own. It's all you can do. It's a weed in the garden that is, no matter how many times you pluck it, it's going to come back. You can just you can highlight it if you want, or you can pave over it and you can ignore it or whatever. But you're never going to talk it away. You're never going to convince it to stop coming around. So you just have to be true to your own values. You have to first determine your values and your principles, those that guide your life. Determine what those are and agree that those are your values and live by them. I'm reading The Four Agreements right now. A book I've heard about for years. I'd never read it, but I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, it
is good. It's very good, and I recommend anybody listening to go out and pick it up. It's a short read. I'm on the last agreement now, and it just has very applicable principles for your life. And if you just picked it up and read it as a guide to how to behave on social media, it would save your life.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's I try to look at it as it's a tool.
It's a powerful tool.
Sometimes it is a powerful tool. But so is a hammer. When you really need a screwdriver, appreciating the tools, using them appropriately, is probably a good idea.
I will tell you that one of my principles is, and I'm also going to say this, I'm going to say up front, I fail at this a lot, and I need to own that I fail at it. But one of my principles is to always build up and never tear down. I can change the world by building. I cannot change the world by tearing down. And if something I say on social media causes someone to have a personal crisis, or get so mad that they have to spend all their energy fighting me on my opinion, what I've done is provide this distraction from them going off and building something good. I would rather you just, if I say something that offends you, you can let me know. A lot of times I may reconsider it and remove it or comment about it or whatever. Most of the time I just say nothing. Like if you decided that I meant something, first of all, one of the biggest problems we have in life is assuming what other people meant. Which, by the way, is one of the agreements. Never make assumptions. But yeah, we assume we know what someone meant when they said, whatever they said. We assume we know not just what they meant, like precisely in that moment, but what their life is and who they are. We assume that we know all these things about them when we really don't know anything. And that, having that perspective can change your life. If you stop making assumptions, you can actually change your life.
Well, and you can win an argument and fail at being a decent
exactly
human.
Right. And I did it a lot over the course of my life. Trust me.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if you can't take stock and be happy with whether you made a difference in the world that day or not, then it's probably time to change.
It's like winning a nuclear war,
Right.
I can raise the earth and win this fight. If I'm determined enough, I'm going to win, right? But what does it benefit me? It's that saying, what benefits a man to gain the world but lose his soul?
Lose his soul.
And
right.
If I raise the earth in this fight, because I've done this. A very good, someone I considered a very good friend of mine, we got into a bickering match about religion in Christianity in particular on Facebook, and I broke out all the weapons, every verbal weapon I ever had, and every logic bomb and everything that I could think of to show her how wrong she was, how just absolutely stupid she was. And in the end, I won. And I haven't spoken to her since. She won't so much as respond to me on apologies. We went from hanging out 2 or 3 times a year as a regular thing. We had a regular engagement where we all hung out together. To I haven't spoken to her, seen her, talked to her in any form for several years now. Did I win?
Wow.
Of course not. I lost.
Right.
I lost big. So,
man, it's powerful stuff, man.
We probably went off in directions we didn't mean to, but
well, that's okay. We went in directions we needed to go to. So how about that? Yeah, I needed that if nobody else did. So Kevin, your latest book is The Girl in the Mayan Tomb. Dan Kotler and Roland Denzel are back. I know you're working on a follow up there. How many Kotler books do you have?
That Girl in the Mayan Tomb is the 4th full-length book in that series right now. Okay. And then there's a novella, The Brass Hall, which is a prequel. And I'm working on the 5th book, which is The Antarctic Forgery. And, what's funny about it, by the way, is I even I texted Ernie to ask him, like, hey, man, do you think people would get upset if I wrote a book called The Antarctic Forgery and I never went to Antarctica? And he's like, yeah, probably. So you can thank Ernie for Antarctica showing up in this. Yeah. So yeah, I have no intention of stopping this series anytime soon. So
nor should you. Nor should you. And I love that we're building a brotherhood of people that write stories about weird things that happened in the past. I absolutely love it. And if you have not read any of Kevin's Dan Kotler series, you need to go pick them up. Are you still offering the first book for free?
Right now you can still get the first book, the Coelho Medallion, or Coelho Medallion, however you want to say it. It's pronounced Coelho, just to keep it all clear. But that's available if you go to my website, kevintumlinson.com. There's a little yellow banner right at the top of the page. You can click on that. Sign up. You'll be joining my newsletter, of course, and that you can get that book for free,
which is a bonus in itself.
Yeah, man, I'm proud of that book. I am, and I recently did a whole rewrite of it to fix some of the issues it had. I introduced a new concept, which is my typo reporter, which some people don't like. I got a really negative review from a guy who said I wouldn't have even written a review for this. But he referred to me as a step down from Dan Brown, and I'm like, that's sweet. I want that on a. I'm going to put that as a tagline somewhere.
Needs to be on a business card.
But he's like, Tumlinson says implies that typos are inevitable, and they're not. And I'm like, well, that's a difference of opinion.
Well, you know what? That story was not for that reader.
No, it wasn't. And that's exactly right. And that's, I'm learning that as I go. And it
still doesn't mean we don't obsess.
Here's what's interesting to me. That same story, that book is the one that people tend to focus on with their criticism. I think it's because it's free. People get it for free. That book gets that sort of comment. It's gotten comments of, criticism about, because back before I corrected some things, they called out some of the mistakes, that book it won awards. It became a bestseller, but not only that, the day after that guy said, criticized that whole book and said I was a step down from Dan Brown, I got a call or an email from an agent. Basically, I don't want to reveal any of this because there may be legal ramifications for all I know. But I got a call from an agent who represents some very well-known authors. And they had read my sample. I had just randomly had sent off several months ago from that book. And they loved it, and they want to talk to me about the potential of representing me. And I'm like, well, okay, so that's some salve for that wound, Now, that doesn't mean anything really. Ultimately, it feels good. It feels like vindication. Like if I want to go the traditional route, at least people do think of me as commercially viable. So I do like that I have that. But the truth of it all for me was always you're not my reader if you don't love the book, and I'm not writing for you. If you do read it and you love it, you're in.
Well, and the funny thing is that book, probably in its original state, is the book that I read that let me know that you and I were kind of on the same page. I was like, this lets me know Kevin is my people, and so obviously I was your
I'm pretty
reader.
sure that was the original version too.
Yeah, and I didn't even see the stuff that people complain about. It's which is there's some reader psychology that would be fun to dig into one day, but I really don't care. I just love the book, and I think when we find something we love, we give the author a lot of grace.
I believe that.
And,
I do believe that.
Yeah. So anyway, well, we've been talking for like almost an hour and a half now. I think we ought to wrap this up. Kevin, if people are not familiar with you, your website's kevintumlinson.com.
That's right.
Is that the best place for people to go and hook up with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the kevintumlinson.com, and depending on what you're looking for, it's going to be there. Just look around.
Great. You've got the banner at the top to where you can get your free copy of the Coelho medallion. Before we go, Wordslinger, are you Are you putting new episodes out
Yep.
now that the move is
Yeah,
over?
I just let a new episode hit last Friday, and I'll produce another one this week. I'll probably do the bulk of the work, but yeah, it's going strong. Very much indie author focused at this point, but I try to make it accessible to everyone. You know.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Go check it out. Subscribe to the Word Slinger podcast. You will love it. And Kevin, thanks for coming on the show today. Everyone listening, you can dance in place. That's stolen from Kevin. So, thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
brother.
man, anytime.
Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. For more great author interviews like this one, go to hankgarner.com and dig through the archives. There's something there I know you'll love. Now stay tuned for a special audio clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
The brutes of the Andersonville Prison Hospital have moved me to the dead room, or so it has come to be known. None so domiciled have yet left this place. We receive only the smallest rations and only cursory care, to reduce our odors and spare the nostrils of our keepers. The good Christians of the Confederacy do not see any need to provide comfort to those who will soon sleep soundly enough underground. You must know, at least, how your father came to such an end. At Doctortown, Kilpatrick entrusted me with the conquest of a railroad trestle, and my bummers, my demolition team, acquitted themselves admirably, thanks to my ingenuity with powder. We successfully destroyed the trestle work past Morgan's Lake. This would prove to be my entire contribution to the war. Federal troops were unable to capture the bridge or overcome the enemy's battery. Kilpatrick withdrew, and my bummers and I found ourselves on the wrong side of the Altamaha River, behind the enemy line with no hope of reaching our encampment. Rebels accosted us, taking our remaining supplies. We escaped and headed south, hoping by a long march to reach Seymour's forces in Jacksonville, but we encountered other rebel encampments at Jessup. 4 of my men were lost to gunfire. We marched west, then south again, barely evading capture. We had no choice but to brave the great swamp Okefenokee. Oh, on and on it goes, in every direction, endlessly. We trudged through miles of grasping mud and noxious rot, pursued by hunger and the mosquito, scratching at our arms and faces until all our skin was scourged. We lived off alligator meat at first, then nothing at all. My men grew mutinous, blamed me for all their misfortunes, threatened to throw me in a sack, weigh me down with stones, and sink my body. Yet was I not equally hungry? Did I not starve? I grew weary of their endless insubordination and contempt. Finally, they took hold of me and swore they would hang me by the neck for leading them to ruin. They were 5 in number, younger than I and more muscular. I was no match for them physically. They laid their hands on me, and I burned them. I burned those men. The flame rose from me as from a volcano, stripping the skin from those boys, blackening their faces, roasting their flesh. And let this be my final ghastly confession. I feasted that night, feasted on the meat of my prospective murderers. And that is how I survived. I staggered alone from that swamp, a mad thing, fueled by outrage and guilt. I saw an encampment of rebel soldiers and surrendered myself gladly. They say in Andersonville prison all men are brothers, equal in filth, equal in terror, equal in ruin. Yet I feel I may claim some small distinction, at least. For I am surely damned to a greater extent than any here.